welcome everybody and good evening. You are here this evening with Autistic Parents UK, and the webinar tonight we are launching. Finally, it's been a while in the works. We are launching Autistic Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, Your Questions Answered. So we've got all the contributors here tonight. Obviously, the project lead, Dr. Amy Grant, and then Autistic UK. We have got Kat and Kathy joining us from Autistic UK, and we have got Becky Warboys, and we have got Sarah King, but unfortunately she's ever so poorly tonight, so she's here in the background, but she's not going to have her camera on this evening, and they're from Marge as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get underway. So you're welcome to have cameras on if you want to. I have muted the microphones. I've just found, obviously we present at least one webinar a month here, and I found that if people can unmute their microphones, we tend to get background noise, which is ever so distracting for the speakers. But please do feel free to use the chat. The chat will be monitored, and we will be contributing to that. So please do feel free to interact with us that way. This is being recorded. Only the hosts are being recorded, so don't worry if you've got your camera on. It's totally fine, and you won't be included in the recording. But this it will be sent out automatically. It normally goes out about a week after the actual event, but do bear with us a little bit because it is done by volunteers, and so we do it in amongst everything else and our normal lives. But this will come out as a recording as well. At the end, there's a little survey to go, which is nice if you get the chance to do so. So we're going to go through from each group. We're just going to have a small talk. Some will be slightly longer than others around what that organisation is and why they chose to contribute to this project. And then we will have some Q&As at the end. I am just going to give a little caveat about the Q&As. So the Q&As need to be around this project. We are all quite happy to discuss what's involved in the project, you know, where else it can go, where you can access it, all of that kind of thing. But even though there's healthcare professionals on the call, nobody will be able to answer personalised medical questions. This just isn't that kind of setting. So please do reach out to your own healthcare professionals if you've got specific medical questions. And again, we can all talk about our own experiences and our own lived experience, but we can't generalise much further than that. I mean, Amy's quite happy to cite studies from experience, but again, we wouldn't be able to go any further than that and be generalised around the population. Wonderful. So all that said, let's get started. I would do a little bit, actually, this is a bit double fold. I always do a bit about who Autistic Parents UK is on all of our webinars, but it's double fold on this because I was going to tell you about who Autistic Parents UK is, and then I'm going to tell you why we contributed to the project. So we are a charity. We got our charitable status 2 years ago now, or nearly 2 years ago in 2022. We are exclusively volunteer-led, and all of our volunteers are autistic parents themselves living in the UK. We basically came about because a small group of autistic parents was looking for a support network for ourselves, and we just found that it didn't exist, that there wasn't a support network that was specifically designed for autistic people who were also parents. So we kind of built it basically, or we're in the process of building it because we certainly like it to be bigger than it is. So we have got a few ways that you can access peer support. We've got a Facebook group, we've got Discord service, we do one-to-one peer support, we do small group peer supports, and there is a small amount of in-person meeting up as well. We do these monthly webinars, we do live Q&A sessions, that's myself and the marvellous Kieran Rose. We've got regular book giveaways, and we do some counselling services, and we do offer professional training as well. So if there are professionals involved, we are available for that too. But we're always looking to improve and do better with what we're doing. So if there's anything you'd like us to do feel free to reach out to us. So having said that, this project. So Dr. Grant approached one of my colleagues, and this is a really wonderful fit for quite a few people within Autistic Parents UK. So we have got our chair, Jenny Guthrie, who is a social worker, and she contributed some videos around parenting styles and around infant development, using her expertise that way. And then there's several of us that this was kind of a weird coincidence. So the first few people who set up Autistic Parents UK knew each other because we all trained with the NCT together. So kind of those first few people on board with Autistic Parents UK were also a mix of antenatal teachers and breastfeeding counsellors and postnatal support workers. And so this was a wonderful merging of that autistic side, which we're also passionate about, and then the perinatal world that we're also really passionate about. So we've got Brianna, who is an IBCLC, and she's contributed to some of the videos around infant feeding. And we've got Lydia, who is a breastfeeding counsellor, who has also got some different videos around infant feeding. So they've looked, there's videos around expressing, there's videos around common issues experienced with breastfeeding that Lydia and Brianna contributed to. And then there's a few for me. So I'm an antenatal teacher, as well as all the stuff that I do with Autistic Parents UK. So I had some videos around your rights. That's something that I'm really passionate around, is people understanding their rights through the whole perinatal period and understanding what they should have access to, and what they have to do and what they don't have to do. So there's some videos around that for me. Also, I did some videos around choosing your place of birth and optimizing your birth experience, no matter where you choose to give birth. Again, it's a topic that I'm really passionate around, is because sometimes we don't have complete choice around where we birth, but for our safety, or for the baby or baby's safety, but we can create beauty in any birthing experience. And so that was what my videos are hopefully giving some support towards, is kind of creating that marvelous experience no matter what else is going on. That's what I'm aiming for. It's something that I see quite a lot through both of my works. So both through being an antenatal teacher and through Autistic Parents UK, is seeing how that perinatal journey, the massive long-term, lifelong, real impact that it has the potential to have, of how we feel about how we're treated, how we feel about the experience, how we feel about our bodies and our relationship with our children. It all starts there. It all starts in those early days and weeks and months, traveling through pregnancy and then going into the postnatal world. And so doing what we can to make that as smooth as we can really makes a difference. Another one of the videos that I did was around meeting your sensory needs as an autistic person, thinking about that birth environment, because it's easy to miss. And if you solely are having your birthing knowledge from non-autistic individuals, it is very likely to be overlooked thinking about the sensory experience. But for us, for so many autistic people, it's the core of our existence, isn't it? Is our sensory experience with the world. And if it's off for us, then any experience, going to the supermarket can be hard if your sensory needs aren't supported. And definitely traveling through that perinatal period if your sensory needs are not met, you are unlikely to enjoy it. So that's what I was looking at as well. I hope that helps. That was probably everything that I wanted to say around our contribution. So if I hand over to Amy now, who will go into a bit more detail about how the project was formed and their contributions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ruth. So I've made some slides just to help show what we're talking about. And I did see there was a question in the chat, Ruth, about if they were going to be shared after. I'm happy for mine to be shared. Oh, I can see I've got a funny toolbar at the bottom of my screen. Let me just see if I can get this to go so you can see all of the slides. Oh, it's always the way, isn't it, with technology? I thought I was being really clever sharing it to start with. No, okay, I think we're just going to have my toolbar at the bottom anyway. So I thought one of the things that would be useful to talk about here is why we decided to create these resources. And also just a little bit of a trigger warning here in that we are talking about things like pregnancy loss and trauma from medical care. So before I get into the detail, I'm going to talk about 4 things. So first, why we decided to create the resources. Second, how we decided what questions we needed to cover, what we created, and I'll drop some hyperlinks in the chat afterwards, and then some next steps. So we, and by we, I mean myself and Kat Williams from Autistic UK and some other colleagues at Swansea University, have done some research on the maternity experiences of autistic people. So first of all, we did something called a systematic review, and that is searching lots of different academic databases to try and find absolutely everything that's been written in terms of research about something. So we did one of those looking at infant feeding experiences. And what we found with that is that really there were issues the entire way through the pregnancy journey with autistic people not getting their needs met. So we then did an online survey just to try and show a little bit more of the need for services to be adapted to autistic needs. So we've had our first paper published from that. And if anyone would like it, put a comment in the chat and I'll drop the link there afterwards. And that paper is called, it felt like I had an old-fashioned telephone ringing in my breasts, because that was how one of our participants described the milk letdown feeling. So we had just under 200 people take part in our survey, and they were really quite privileged. So high levels of education, mostly white, and most people preferred to speak. So we didn't have that many people who were non-speaking. And just really briefly, I'm just going to give you a few of the different experiences that our participants had. So experiences were almost entirely negative. We had very, very few positive experiences throughout the data set. One of the things that people said, and if you look at the first quote on the slide, was that they just didn't feel comfortable saying that they were autistic. It didn't feel safe. And this participant said, I felt less safe disclosing my autism at the second birth, mainly because I knew there would be so many different people involved and some of them could judge me unfit to parent. And we have a video about interactions with social care and actually how that can be incredibly difficult for autistic parents. We also had people talking about not having consent sought for procedures, and that could be the whole way through, from kind of before they were going to have the gel put on their tummy for an ultrasound scan, all the way through to very invasive procedures around birth. There seemed to be a lack of understanding of what autism was like among health professionals who were supporting autistic people during maternity. And that meant that pain could go unmanaged. So we had, I think it was about 10 people who literally had their baby almost about to be born when it still wasn't believed by their health professional because they didn't look in pain according to what that midwife or obstetrician commonly saw. We also had lots of negatives in terms of communication. So people feeling like they were disliked by their maternity professionals, their questions going unanswered, feeling fobbed off. And, you know, we had these 4 positive experiences, but they were often caveated. So the last quote on the slide says, "On the whole, my midwife was really great. I was lucky to have consistency throughout my pregnancy and mostly had the same midwife who got to know me and my needs." And I haven't put the rest of what they said on the slide, but it went on. When I saw anybody different, that was when things started to go wrong. So we've got lots and lots of experiences of challenges. And then a few different things happened at once. So I got an email from somebody at the university saying, "We have £100,000 we need to spend in the next 3 months. Would you like it?" And I said, "Yes, please," not quite knowing what I was going to spend it on, but knowing it would be good. And then the day before that, I'd met Aisha and Kieran from AP UK. And I was like, "Oh, would you like to do something with me?" And then separately, I was given almost £2.5 million to study autistic reproductive health. And what that meant is I don't have a teaching load at the moment. So I have much more freedom in how much time I could spend on other things. So that's how this project came about. So we had meetings with Autistic UK and Autistic Parents UK. So we had parents and then expertise in maternity as well, as Ruth's already outlined. And we discussed the topics and key questions that people had when they were pregnant. And then we voted to get a consensus on which were the most important topics. And for those, we aim to identify one autistic parent and one autistic professional who had some sort of relevant experience there. And so here we involved the Maternity and Autism Research Group, and Becky, who's a midwife, will talk a little bit later about her experiences. And also we had a fantastic anaesthetist from Autistic Doctors International who made us a whole series of videos about what happens if you go to theatre. And so we created 114 videos, which, my goodness, it was a marathon, not a sprint, to get this project done. We originally thought maybe we'd have somewhere between 7 and 10 short animations, but it grew. There were so many different questions and they were all really important. And these were all created by autistic people. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who took part. And I think particularly for some of our parents, they shared really, really emotive and personal things. And I've had so much positive feedback already that people thought it was just happening to them, or, you know, that they feel less alone because of these things. And also I want to put out some special mentions to some people that have been on this marathon with me. So Rebecca Ellis at Swansea University basically organised this project for me. I haven't put her on the slide, but Katrine from AP UK also did a lot of organising for us. And then we have Kathy Jackson at AUK who edited our videos, and Anwin Francis at Swansea University who's translated almost all of the 114 into Welsh. So we will have a bilingual resource. Our English videos are on YouTube on the channel Autism Menstruation to Menopause, and our Welsh videos are on our Welsh channel that I cannot pronounce very well, but the link is there and I can drop that in the chat as well. So here's just a little show of what our YouTube channels are looking like, and I'll pop the links up so everyone can see them. And so just to finish off then, so please do feel free to share these videos widely. They can be put in teaching, in training, put links to them anywhere and everywhere. We want to get them to as many autistic people as possible, but also to as many health professionals who are supporting autistic people, particularly in maternity, just to really improve care. My big project I mentioned, £2.5 million from the Wellcome Trust, is called Autism from Menstruation to Menopause, and we've gone much wider. We're doing all reproductive health, and we have an open Facebook group for anybody and a closed Facebook group only for autistic people who are assigned female at birth. And my contact details are there if you want to get hold of me for anything. And yeah, I'll answer any questions in the chat if anyone has them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. That was a wonderful contribution. I think we want to come over now to Kat Williams from Autistic UK.
Hi everyone. Thank you. I don't have any slides to share after that lovely presentation. You just get to listen to my voice and see my face, you lucky people. So my name is Kat. I am an autistic parent to autistic children. I'm the research director for Autistic UK CIC, and I'm also a PhD student at Cardiff University, researching the role of communication and access to healthcare for autistic adults. So I wear lots of hats, not literally. Autistic UK CIC is a disabled people's organisation run by autistic people for autistic people. We mainly work in systems advocacy, so that's working with UK central and devolved governments, organisations such as the NHS and the police to ensure that the rights of autistic people are met in policy and practice. And we also work with researchers such as Dr. Amy Grant on neuroaffirming research projects and dissemination activities that centre autistic experience. So this project is one that's very close to my heart. So I didn't know I was autistic when I was pregnant with my children. I was diagnosed after my eldest son. But I did know that my experiences of pregnancy and parenting didn't resonate with my non-autistic friends. I felt too much. My hypersensitivity to sensory stimuli went off the charts, and I really struggled with how much pregnancy and parenting disrupted my routines and my need for alone time. And now that I have a large network of autistic and otherwise neurodivergent people in my life, I recognise that my experiences are far from unique. They were simply pretty standard autistic experiences. And I've created some videos based on my pregnancies and early parenting, which I'm hoping will be helpful to other autistic people, including feeling less alone in their experiences. And this evening, I'm going to talk about why it was important for autistic parents to be able to share their experiences through the production of these videos. So the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about what to talk about was the irony that so much autism research, practice, including training and often policy knowledge, centres parent voices until it comes to the experiences of autistic parents. Autistic parents are very often missing or drowned out. And I think part of the reason for this is there's still an assumption that autistic parents don't exist. Part of this still revolves around the idea of autism being something that happens to white boys. So by centering autistic parents and autistic professionals, these videos work hard to make visible the range of ages, backgrounds, and experiences that make up the autistic experience beyond young and male. And it also doesn't help that for decades, autistic parents have been diagnosed after their children, and by definition, after they have been through pregnancy in the early years of parenting. However, this is changing, and the current and next generations of pregnant autistic people, it seems, are more likely to already know that they are autistic. And this means that there's probably going to be an increased demand for autistic-specific materials to learn about this exciting but sometimes anxiety-inducing time of their lives. But it is imperative that these materials be created by autistic people for them to be accurate, supportive, and anti-ableist. So when autistic parents are accepted as existing, which is a very low bar to hurdle, we are often seen as, to borrow a term from a brilliant paper by researcher Katie Benson, as perplexing. We are odd, baffling, puzzling. And this perceived bizarreness puts us at higher risk of being thought to inherently find parenting difficult. And at its worst, it puts us at higher risk of social work intervention, which is something that Amy brought up earlier. And this intervention is often in the form of training, where autistic parents are sent to learn about how to parent their often autistic children. But this training is almost always written and delivered by non-autistic people. It also centres what non-autistic experiences of demonstrations of love, support and family look like. And this brings me to my main point. I think that part of the perception that autistic parents are perplexing, including during pregnancy, is that the experience and descriptions of pregnancy and parenting are based around non-autistic life worlds. They're created through a non-autistic lens, and these non-autistic subjective lives are thought to be what everyone does or should experience. But we're autistic. Our life world is different. Our experiences are different. Why would pregnancy and parenting be any different? So by hearing directly from autistic parents and professionals, we can start to accept that there are a multitude of experiences, with autistic ones and their descriptions being just as valid as those non-autistic ones. And when considering the double empathy problem as described by Dr. Damien Milton, an autistic academic for those of you who don't know, there are often misunderstandings when autistic and non-autistic communicate with each other due to the different life worlds I've been talking about. However, these sorts of communication breakdowns don't seem to happen when autistic people are communicating with each other. And this suggests that autistic pregnant people and their birthing partners, who might also be autistic, are more likely to understand and trust videos created by other autistic people. So it was a pleasure and a privilege to see this idea bloom into such an extraordinary number of videos. And I really hope they ensure that other autistic people have better experiences of pregnancy, birth and beyond than a lot of us did. So thank you to Dr. Amy Grant for finding the funding for this, and thank you to everybody who's been involved in this. And I really do hope that everyone here has a look at the videos and shares them widely, because a lot of work's gone into them and they really are a rich resource for parents and professionals alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. That was marvellous. No slides required. Thank you so much. Becky, if we come over to you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. How do I follow all that? Everybody spoke so eloquently and beautifully. I'm just going to share my slides. So if you just give me one moment and I will do that. As soon as I find the Zoom meeting again, I'm just tabbing through to find you. There we go. And I will share screen too. How do people just have one computer screen? I don't know. I like 3. It's probably a really autistic thing, but I have one here, and one here, and I don't know how people cope with just one screen. It's just beyond me. So hello everybody. So I've been asked to talk today just as one of the midwives who contributed to the project in terms of recording the videos, and just talk a little bit about what I felt I brought as a midwife to the project, why I took the tack that I took with various things. So I've put Marge there. I nearly put a photo of Marge Simpson on, just because that's who we all thought about when we came up with the name Marge, and we came up with the Maternity Autism Research Group. And I'm one of the founding midwife members of that group. So it was an absolute privilege to be able to be invited to do these videos. So I hope I do today justice. I have 2 crazy kittens, and they've been really good, and they've not come near me while I've been watching, but they just keep on looking at me above the thing. So if we get a jump on, it'll just be one of the crazy cats, so I do apologize for that. So next slide. So why did I want to be involved in the project? So this is myself on shift with another amazing colleague of mine who was happy enough for me to share her photograph with me. So I've got a personal interest in autism. Obviously, all of us who end up in the Marge project are, and on this project also. So I'm a Masters of Education student researcher. So I'm currently working and looking at the impact basically of having an autistic midwife on the care that autistic women and birthing people receive during their maternity experiences. So I'm knee deep in my first research project and seeing lots of exciting things come out of that. Now, that came from the fact that I first of all found out I was a mum to autistic children. Here's my beautiful family. We're all autistic now, we understand that. My 4 children are diagnosed, my husband is diagnosed, and I am just on the pathway now. It took me a lot longer to get to the point where, okay, this is why I'm so quirky and different as well. I was just saying beforehand, hence embracing the Winnie the Pooh and being unapologetically myself. And I like that thing when you learn you're autistic and you can just be yourself. Obviously a wife as well, autistic husband, and an autistic person myself as an individual, and I'm learning more and more about that and learning more about myself as I go along. So I feel like when you then bring the midwifery into it, I feel like I brought my own insight as each individual autistic midwife did to this project. So I can only speak about my own personal experiences because each individual midwife, and I've spoken to all the March midwives who were involved, and they are absolutely amazing. So I'm just doing this from my perspective, but I'm sure there's a lot of overlap as well. Oh, that's annoying. My title is going to come up last, and I really do want my title, so I'm going to bring all the information up. So as an autistic midwife, I feel I've brought a multifaceted perspective. I was quite pleased with my big words there because I'm not great on the big words normally. A multifaceted perspective of the maternity journeys of autistic women and birthing people. So I think it's about understanding the challenges that autistic people face. So I understand that from my own life and then applying that to my maternity settings and what that means for your quality of life, particularly in terms of the increased risk of trauma, mental health problems, difficulties communicating, isolation, being excluded, and the whole inequality that autism brings along, unfortunately. Also, as a midwife, you understand the realities of maternity care, and you understand why those realities might be so challenging when it comes to an autistic person experiencing that maternity service, which I just don't think that, well, I'm learning this from my research, the non-autistic midwives don't really quite get it. The findings from my own literature review, I'm reviewing my own literature, it wasn't my literature, but reviewing everybody else's literature, it completely mirrors what's already been said, but about the poor experiences that we know that autistic women and birthing people are receiving when it comes to their their maternity care whilst they're autistic as well. My own study, I'm learning that there are differences in language, so it might be even about how autistic people are talked about. Sometimes it can unfortunately be seen negatively that, you know, autistic people might be seen as rude or difficult or being deliberately obtrusive because, and it usually comes down, and I'm learning this time and time again, there's a lack of understanding of midwives. We are just getting the Oliver McGowan training, but it is so not based on anything that happens in maternity care. So I'm sure the Oliver McGowan training it's brilliant. It's really, really great for the rest of the NHS. For those of you that don't know, Oliver McGowan was a young gentleman who unfortunately passed away following directly as a result of his NHS care. So his mum is an absolutely amazing advocate, and she's put a lot of time and effort into changing things within the NHS, and the fact that we didn't have any training about caring for neurodiverse people, just as a normal nurse, normal midwife, normal doctor. Obviously people in those settings who were dealing with people with learning disabilities and neurodiversities did, but the rest of us didn't. So they brought that training in, but it isn't really relevant to what's going on in maternity at the minute. So there's a way to go still. So myself, I'm an antenatal educator anyway, and what I've understood is that the more knowledge you have, anybody has, whether they're neurodiverse or non-neurodiverse, the more knowledge you have, the more opportunity you have to make a truly informed decision. And when people are making truly informed decisions, they feel less traumatized. And it's usually because if you do not have the information, you start to feel like things happen to you, swept along with the process, and you sense that loss of control. And it's usually that loss of control during the experience that makes people feel really traumatized. If they feel they made their own choices, if they understand the decisions along the way that were included in those decisions, they tend to feel better. And what we know from all the research, whether you're neurodiverse or whether you're neurotypical, is that if people have experienced less trauma at the beginning, then that gives a better start to family life for the entire family unit. So we're talking about making a difference for those babies, because if their baby's parents have got better mental health and they're feeling happier, we know that babies have a better start in life. So we want to make the difference for the babies, we want to make the difference for the women and the birthing people. So I do think that we come at it from a different point of view, and we simply have this different insight that non-neurodiverse midwives simply don't have. So with that insight and with that understanding, when it came to what we were actually including, what did I think was important and that I needed to include it in my videos? And I think when I've watched my colleagues, they've thought about similar things as well. So I went through, first of all, and thought about all the different things that we know are autistic traits. So we might think about our social communication difficulties and differences, and the impact of sensory sensitivities. We need to think about sometimes as well the executive function issues. So there's the whole spectrum of what we know that autistic people will struggle with, and the things like the restricted repetitive behaviors and interests. So those restricted repetitive behaviors and interests, they look like, as we all know, the fact that somebody might have a hyperfixation on one thing or a special interest on one thing, however you want to describe that language. But they also might struggle with change, so they prefer sameness. And change comes in lots of forms. So change can be change to your normal environment, change to your normal routine, or just changes to plans, even if it's not normal, but you've made a plan. And autistic people prefer everything laid out for them. And I'm sure a lot of people here will understand that. So I kind of thought about all the traits that autistic people share and what this means when you look at it from a UK maternity services point of view. So the really important thing for me was about looking at it and thinking, okay, we have to talk about the fact that you have a right to a reasonable adjustment. Bottom line, that's the Equality Act, and that's what you're entitled to. So these things are going to be really difficult and really challenging in maternity care, and we'll talk about what those difficulties were in just a moment's time. So I wanted to think about what could we do to make those easier. So if people don't know, they can ask for something to be different. They may feel swept along in the process and like they don't have a voice. So this is why the videos are amazing, because we're telling all these autistic people who are going to be using the maternity services in the UK, these are your rights and this is what you can do, and these are the things you might want to think about. And it also helps them to get their head around that before they're facing those experiences, which will hopefully make that experience even easier. So I took that and I thought about the practical advice I could give from that unique insight that I feel autistic midwives have that can make that journey easier. And the reason is we see what happens, we see how the process runs, we see how care plans can change, we see how difficult it can be, and we don't always get our plan A. I always talk about a plan A birth plan, a plan B and a plan C. So actually your plan A is the ideal birth, if I could have everything I wanted, but then with that knowledge and understanding that sometimes the farmer needs to tend to its sheep don't always just give birth really easily. I'm not the best farmer, so I probably shouldn't have picked that analogy, but I know, for example, when we're talking about panda bears, how we are going to leave that panda bear alone as much as possible, and we're going to watch it from a distance, and we're going to intervene as little as possible. But equally, sometimes we know that the panda needs that medical assistance as well. So I think, going on to panda bears, that's because I'm going off of my oxytocin brain. I think it's really important that we can think about that, and the fact that you might need a plan B and you might need a plan C, and your plan C might be the fact that you might end up needing a cesarean section. So I work with people who just hadn't even considered that could happen to them, and about 30% of people will end up in that position. So you need that preparation as well, that might be you and that you're ready for that. So you look at the sensory differences and the sensory needs. So Lycra, so when your waters break, Lycra smells. Lycra's got a really, really strong smell. If you've got somebody who knows they struggle with strong smells, you need to prepare them for that rather than the shock of it. Because by preparing them for those differences before they go into labour, it might be that they've got things in hand. They may have bring some aromatherapy that they can smell if they find that overwhelming, or they might just be asking, and the midwives be aware that they need to be changing those pads much more regularly than they otherwise would do, because the smell is going to cause a problem, for example. It might be that they know that they are going to struggle when the baby's born because the baby's wet and slippy. So when the baby's birthed, we normally just want to put that baby straight up there and help the mum by warming the baby with towels over the top of mum, birthing parent, and keeping them all nice warm. But actually, if this is somebody who's going to really struggle with that wet baby, maybe it's better that that person's had an opportunity to think about that sensation. So there's so much of a plethora, and until you're living it every day and you're seeing it as an autistic midwife, and I don't think you see it, I don't think any typical practitioner would see those little things that we see, because they're not having the same sensory experiences that we have. The impact of the unpredictable nature of maternity care is absolutely massive. And again, until you're on the inside of it, I think it's really hard to understand that. So we're going to put your antibiotics up in half an hour. So we're sat in the room. Okay, it's right, there we go, half an hour, that's the time. Where are they? Why aren't they coming? And because we're talking about, we're going against that plan, we're going to start to build up anxiety. So it's actually knowing, actually, I'm going to struggle. If you say something's going to happen in half an hour and then there's an emergency going on elsewhere, that's fine. But can somebody just let me know that you're not going to come in and put my IV antibiotics up at that time? And that can be part of the overall care plan. And the fact that an emergency situation can arise for the woman, the person themselves as well. So it is really unpredictable. So everything's going along nicely. You're planning this normal birth. Everything's going exactly as you want. You're expecting it to be nice and straightforward. And then all of a sudden, the baby's heart rate plummets and there's lots of people in the room, or you're pushing the baby out and all of a sudden the baby's shoulder gets impacted, and it changes very, very rapidly. So it's about trying to help people understand what will happen, so it's not a shock, and the fact that all these people will come into the room and they're all there to keep you safe, but rather than the shock of it happening at the time it happens, and really how that's communicated to people. Practitioners change every shift time, but also you get different plans from different practitioners. So one doctor on the last shift has given you this plan and you're told, right, well, I'm going to be induced tomorrow and that's what I'm happy with and we've talked it through, and the next doctor comes along and says, oh, you can go home, we don't need to induce you after all. And it's just, what is going on? And you can just feel it. I can feel it even thinking about it. Those stress levels starting to rise. So it's just about the fact that this is what happens. Let's prepare you. Let's give you that knowledge and give you that information to prepare you as much as possible for that unpredictable nature. And plans change all the time. It might be based on the fact that, yep, this is the plan, based on the fact that we're going to induce you, or we're going to offer you an induction. Hopefully that would be the language that would be used. We're going to offer you an induction, and we have that discussion and we plan that we're going to induce you at 38 weeks or whatever the time is that they've agreed to that procedure to happen. And then all of a sudden your blood pressure spikes, and then all of a sudden, actually, now we would like to invite you in tomorrow instead. So the plans change. So it's just that idea. And I think that's really, 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 really hard as an autistic person. I think it's the hardest thing of my whole job when I'm working with autistic people, because I know how hard that is. I mean, my daughters struggle if a bus isn't on time, or struggle if we change our plan and say, actually, we're going to the supermarket in 10 minutes. This is a massive thing where you're already really anxious, you're not in your own environment, and then we're changing the plans on you last minute like that. So it's just about really doing as much as we can do to prepare people for that unpredictable nature, but also to sort the staff out that are caring for you, so that staff become sensitive to that actually, so you might think, oh, it's only half an hour late, why are they having a hissy fit with me? Why are they being difficult? Oh, they've been really awkward because I've been half an hour late, and it's only half an hour. It's just, actually, it's understanding how important that is to that person. And that's what the videos were able to do. We could think through all those little things and give people the information so they know that their plan of care can change such a lot. And the communication and the interaction differences, it gave me an opportunity to talk about that on the videos and think about, okay, what do you know about your communication style? So I talk very quickly, I'm very animated, I'm excited about this project. If I knew somebody told me I need additional processing time, there's my pauses. I'm going to give you the information, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to process. And that is a really good opportunity for people to think about what they need, so they can talk about with their midwives what they need. Do they do better with written information? Do they do better with things explained on a video format? Do the midwives need to be giving a Google to find out about anti-D on a video if they're going to explain it? And that's what we're able to talk about. What do you need so that you can talk to your practitioners about it? And the interaction differences, I come across as rude sometimes, but I'm not being rude. It's just my style. And everybody will then pass that on. And all of a sudden, you've got a much more positive opinion of that person. And it's sad that that needs to happen. But I think it's really, really helpful for people to have a chance in their pregnancies to think about these things and to give their midwives a chance to make a plan so that the midwives who are caring for that person do so much better as well in terms of the care that they're giving. So the absolute need for as much realistic information as possible, especially as these are all new and likely anxiety-inducing experiences. So we know that one of the problems with maternity services for autistic people is that autistic people mask, and autistic people copy what other people do. And now we're giving you a completely new environment, a completely new service, and some people just don't know how to behave. And I know my eldest daughter particularly would really struggle with that, because she will copy what other people are doing. She copies them at school, so she behaves in that way when she was at school with them. She copied them at university in order to know how to act. And all of a sudden we're putting you in this environment and you've got nobody to follow, nobody to see how it's meant to be done. And I think we need to really, really think about when we're preparing these videos, and this is what I did as much as I could do, about what it was going to be like. And we all did that, what it's going to be like, so that we give you as much information so that there's less surprises and you're more ready to be yourself and have that plan of care. And I think that's the end of my little presentation, so I'll stop slide sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you so much, everybody, for your contributions. I think that was all of the speakers that we had this evening who wanted to talk through the different organisations that went into making this project. So if there's any questions that the audience have got, please feel free to pose them. I've been having a little look through the chat, and I think most of them we've been answering as we go along. Yeah, there's some good comments though. Yeah, Mel saying their birth plan looks at every birth method, so I don't freak out too much to change. Yeah, I think it's been interesting reflecting actually, because I was the same as Kat, that I actually had 4 children and didn't realise that I was autistic until after I'd had all of them. So I had all of my births, not realising that I was an autistic person. But what I did was, when I was pregnant with number 3, I did my degree, which was all about, well, it's antenatal education, but obviously there's quite a lot in there about birth, and that was marvellous. I actually left thinking, well, you know, antenatal education is great, but what people really need is a degree. Once they have a degree in this stuff, you're much more involved. It's much easier to make birth choices. So yeah, having a really robust birth plan that looks at lots of different possibilities, I think, can be quite an autistic thing. And I did mention there in the chat that we do have videos about birth plans and different choices that are available to you in birth. So it really is a fantastic resource when you're looking to put your birth plans together. This can be great. And I know Amy's put some resources for further learning. As we mentioned at the beginning, we can't kind of go through everybody's individual circumstances, and we can't talk through individual health situations because this is a webinar and that's not really an appropriate setting to do so. So Amy had mentioned looking on the NHS website can be a great starting point if you do have specific situations that are unique to you or are less common. And then resources that I really like referring people to if you want to do in-depth knowledge about a specific topic or area. Dr. Sarah Wickham is fantastic. She's got a lot of free resources on her website. And Dr. Rachel Reed as well, who's got their website is Midwife Thinking. And again, free resources, all evidence-based, lots of studies cited, so you can go and look at the research yourself if you're that kind of person, and they can be great for more in-depth knowledge about specific topics, because the videos on this project are never longer than 3 minutes. it gives a little bit of a limit as to how much actual information we tried to. I think most of the videos we've tried to focus it around the autistic experience rather than relaying facts. Yeah, does that seem? Yeah. Wonderful. I'm going to have a little flick through the comments. If anybody else wants to bring up any thoughts they've had as they're looking through the chat, please feel free to do that.
Can I just jump in, Ruth,
Please.
and just give a little bit more detail about the playlists? So we do have like a range of different playlists on there. So we've divided it into pregnancy, birth and postnatal. We also have a pregnancy loss playlist. But maybe if I could just quickly share my screen and people can see that I do only have about 10 tabs open, which isn't bad for this time on a Friday. But these are just our playlists. So if I copy that link into the chat, it might help people find things that are of more interest to them. So we've got here some general information, what happens in antenatal appointments, autistic experiences of pregnancy, some common complications in pregnancy, pregnancy loss. So then we've got some birth ones, so a survival guide for hospital, different places you can give birth in the environments, what you might want to kind of expect. And some of these birth videos maybe are things you'd never have thought about. So that one's quite a good one. Types of pain and pain relief. Then we've got a whole series of videos on autistic parents' experiences of giving birth. And then we've got a good chunk of videos about what happens after birth. So this is exactly what's going to happen shortly after birth, all the different things that will happen, feeding your baby, having concerns there might be something wrong either with you or with your baby after birth. And this postnatal video, your rights over your child, is really important. That's got all the social work stuff in. Some of it is really, really harrowing, coming from autistic people who've had their children taken away from them or have had really difficult social work experiences. And then we've got more just general postnatal experiences from parents. And then all of our videos are in this playlist if you want to just blitz through all of them. So there's lots there. There's, of course, more that we could have created if we had enough time and enough budget, because we made sure everybody was paid for all of their contributions to this. Yeah, I don't know if that was a helpful run through or completely overwhelming.
I think it's good to see a snapshot. I hope the audience has found it useful as well. But it's one of the things that we're doing a lot in the chat, isn't it? It's saying, oh yeah, we've got a video on that. Yeah, we've got a video on that. We did, because there was quite a few of us, wasn't there? There was probably near on a dozen of us when we were going through the decision-making process of what to do videos about and what to include. It did mean that we had a range, didn't it? I think everybody had their own unique input and experiences through their perinatal journey. And so there was quite a lot of discussion, both about things that we all found in common. There was quite a lot, wasn't there? We were all saying, yes, we definitely need that. Yeah, that's a really shared experience. But there were also some unique stories and contributions that were still really valid and really needs to be included in there. And there's some really beautiful personal accounts that are shared, aren't there, of people who've had their own unique journeys. But I know that's obviously only within a dozen people, and out at the wider audience that will be shared much more. So yeah, we have got there's an awful lot in that resource, isn't there? Yeah. Somebody's just asked there about diagnoses. So I don't think that there is a specific video around seeking diagnoses during the perinatal period or accessing supports without a formal diagnosis. But hopefully, even if you didn't have a formal diagnosis, you would find the content of a lot of the videos very, very relevant. And you can still talk with your healthcare professionals and your birth support team around accessing accommodations and accessing adjustments, even if you don't have a formal diagnosis. So as I say, the content will largely be applicable, even if you haven't got that official piece of paper. Super. Thank you. Great. Yeah, needs-based care. Yeah, that's exactly right, Denise. Yeah, so Denise from Marge has popped in there that you can, it's needs-based, not diagnosis-based. That's right. Yeah, yeah, super. I think that was everything that we wanted to go through. Sorry, I'll just add in, someone's just put that they had adjustments prior to their official diagnosis. That's marvellous. Thank you for sharing that now. I think that was everything that we wanted to go through tonight. So if I can say thank you so much to everybody for joining us. Thank you so much for the audience as well. As I say, please do check out the video, do have a look, do share anything that you think is relevant, share it with anybody who you think would like to listen, because that's what it's there for. Yeah. Would anybody else like to contribute just to finish off?
Just thank you for everybody for coming along, and honestly, do share these videos as widely as you can. You know, we're not precious about having to be told who's using them or whatever, just get them out there.
Marvellous. Well, thank you so much. Thank you again. Thank you to all of the panel who've been able to join us and talk this evening or join in on the chat. And thank you so much to the people who've been able to join us live as well. I think all the organisations have managed to share their links on the chat. So if you're looking for any of us specifically, we've got Autistic UK. Dr. Amy Grant has shared all of their links. Becky here was from Marge, and I saw several Marge links, including Marge are currently doing some research I was just seeing around autistic experience of birth trauma. So please do check that out if that's relevant. You feel willing to contribute to that. And then obviously we're from Autistic Parents UK. Find us wherever you normally find your stuff. We'll probably be there. Thank you so much, everybody. Good night. Good night.